Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission post New Moon. It is September 7th, 2021. Welcome and welcome back. If you're new to this channel, thank you for being here. If you've been here the whole time in close to 2 years that I have been transmitting, Catalyst Energies will be 2 years old come November. End of November. So regardless if you're new here or if you are regular, I really do appreciate you being here. And as always, whenever you interact with this content by hitting the subscribe button, hitting the like button, it really does influence the algorithm and assures that this message reaches a wider audience, especially if you do find it valuable and insightful and part of your regular guidance or your routine. It actually will assist in this process. So thank you very much. And let's get to the transmission for today. Oh boy, feeling a little emo today, And if you see the thumbnail image for this, if you see the thumbnail image for today's transmission, you will get an idea that there is a sense of, more than even feeling emo, just a sense of just surrender, right? And that is really the essence of this transmission today, is to surrender to what is, right? And stop, resisting and kind of wasting or pushing through, or I don't want to say wasting, that's not the right word. It's we try to fight so much to get a certain outcome, to be part of the solution, and we're fighting and we're fighting and we're fighting, and eventually we come to a point here, and especially with Virgo, this is such a big part of the sign of Virgo, is that we surrender to ourselves. We stop fighting ourselves and we surrender to ourselves. And I picked the imagery for today's transmission. If you are familiar with it, then you know what it is. And if not, this is a artistic rendering of the moment that Jesus is praying in the garden on the night of his betrayal. So it is the moments before he is actually apprehended and taken into custody, and then the whole process of his trial leading to his execution. And in that moment, knowing what to expect, knowing what's coming, and praying, almost like one last ditch effort, like, do I have to do this? Despite knowing that this is the outcome of everything that has transpired up to this point. And I thought, and a lot of people don't think, and I've had so many conversations about this in the last couple of days. Many people find themselves, if they are into the modalities that have to do with astrology and things like energy work and intuitive readings, tarot, all of the modalities that have been, kind of sectioned off into the new age, which is, in my opinion, is, they're so much older than what the new age represents. But that's neither here nor there, not at least for this conversation. But I do know that the people on either side of the aisle tend to be triggered when you bring things like religion or Christianity or monotheism into the same Venn diagram as astrology and all of these other new age type of modalities. But I wanted to actually share something interesting and read a couple verses out of the New Testament that relate to this particular scene, because I think it's just really very relevant to where we are now, in terms of there's a lot of pushing, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of resistance, and of course we should not necessarily bow down to those other human beings that insist that they control every aspect of our lives. But there comes a time where all of the template has been put into place, is in the process of being fulfilled. And there isn't anything that our ego, it's kind of like the stages of grief, right? You know, one of the main stages of grief, well, there's 5 stages of grief. And besides the denial part, it is the bargaining, right? And I feel like that we actually are in this bargaining moment, globally and collectively. And I myself have found over the last couple of days, despite the new moon really providing a lot of opportunities for healing and for growth, and really getting into that shadow aspect and integrating it, and the potential that it provides, I've also found myself really facing some very heavy and very dark energy that, despite my best efforts to keep the vibe high, right, it doesn't really take away from the pressure that I feel pushing in. And if you happen to catch the short video I made over the weekend about energetic hygiene, and how when we stir up, you know, that which we want to clean up in a certain environment, that we have to give ourselves some type of filtration, some means to protect ourselves from being completely infected by that which we are attempting to clean up. And I use the example of cleaning up the basement in my parents' house, because the one side of it is completely taken over by mold, and having to wear a respirator, and having to be completely covered, and be willing to get rid of those clothes afterwards, because it's not so much it's the disturbance of the mold spores, right? That is what ends up being dangerous. So when we take the initiative to stir things up and to clean up energetically, there is an inevitable scattering and a scattering of these energies that will try their very best, because of the imperative to survive. Regardless what you think about it, there is an imperative to survive, and those mold spores are going to look for a place to find themselves, but they don't really move until we move them. And the Virgo archetype is very much part of this, because it does require that we get not only underneath the surface of who we are, but we are actually moving things around. And one of the things that I did over the weekend preparing for this new moon, besides that particular work, oh my gosh, I mean, talk about timing just being so perfect to show how these types of activities are so related in an esoteric and energetic way. I also completely cleaned my house from top to bottom, just whatever I could do to clean up and reorganize, and really put into a material, very physical form this concept of energetic hygiene. And it really does set the it sets the stage, and it provides what is needed in order for that which we are growing to support the seed of the next cycle. And there's no way that the seed can be released without the fruit of the plant being sacrificed, right? And so I just felt like that this moment here that is shown in the garden was kind of a perfect way to explain what many of us, I think, are actually going through. And this message is not going to be for everyone, because I know that there are many people who are in a different stage of their own personal journey, and we have to be willing to accept that. We have to be willing to respect that, and just be aware and acknowledge that not everybody's in the same place. But I know that I am not the only one that has felt the pressure, the immense pressure of this darkness that is inevitably needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be seen. It needs to be felt. It needs to be acknowledged. And it's so big, and it's so heavy, and it's so dark that the ego will do whatever it needs to do to keep us from having to have a direct relationship with that. And I don't know, H.P. Lovecraft's been coming up quite a bit lately. And if you're familiar with his work, and I never got really into Lovecraft, but one of the things that I am aware of is that when his conception of facing this void or facing the immensity of this void will drive someone insane. And I feel as if without acknowledging the depth and the heaviness of the darkness that will absolutely need to be brought to our awareness in its fullness in order to release it, we really a lot of people will choose a different pathway out. And you can see that choice point being made available in a number of different ways. And it's very, we are in the bargaining stage of this grief process. Not everybody, of course, but I feel like generally that's where we are. And the fighting, right? The resistance, the fighting against it rather than empowering ourselves in this moment is really where I think collectively we're still at. Now, as we move through this lunar cycle now, right? We're going to, if we set those intentions, not only to get into our own shadow work and to utilize it in order to heal, right? To be real with ourselves, to and still be determined, still be courageous, still be devoted to the process no matter what. We will be, through the course of this next 4 weeks, given some symbolic representation, something that will show us that we are on the path and that we have, in fact, fulfilled our commitment. But it's not going to be easy. So and like I said, if Jesus isn't your thing, that's fine. But I'm going to read from the New Testament anyway, because I think it's really important to realize how many people fall away when the rubber meets the road. And this is what happened in the garden, right? He brings all of his disciples with him, and he brought them with him. And this is the time that he said, that you're all pretty much going to betray me, right? And Peter's just like, no, I would die before I betrayed you. So then they go into the garden, and it says, then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. And said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Anybody else feeling that lately? I know I am deeply, deeply distressed. Deeply, deeply distressed. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. So he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Now you're going to see here how we have 2 cups on the either side of this reading today, and they are both in Scorpio. And I pulled these cards before I did any of this, getting into the New Testament, even getting down to the nitty gritty of the astrology today. And there is some direct karmic confrontation that is written in the cosmology for today. So then he said, let this cup pass from me, nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. So he is basically asking one last time, like, will you release this burden from me? Only if it's your will. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, okay? He found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Now, we had a Virgo new moon. It was in trine to Uranus in Taurus. Mars in Virgo, it was in a trine to Pluto in Capricorn. There is a ton of earth energy. It is very much rooted in the nuts and bolts of physical reality right now. All of these challenges that are incredibly powerful, incredibly potent. You have Uranus, the great transformer, right? You have Pluto, the power of our soul to transform, and the depth of our soul and its power. In Capricorn and Earth sign, we have Virgo with the new moon, which is, again, is about mutable earth, the work that we do on a material level within ourselves in order to come forward in devotion and service to other, right? Whatever other is, right? When we step into Libra, it is when the fruit is sacrificed for the seed, right, of the next cycle. And so he says he found them sleeping. He's like, guys, you couldn't even like stay awake for an hour? Like, what's up with that? And then he said, watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. This is where self-preservation really comes into the picture, right? You can have a perspective, a feeling, you can want for something to happen all day, but when you are challenged down to your very survival, or even comfort, right? Even base comfort. It's not even survival, it's just comfort sometimes, which is a very Taurus thing, which is a very connected to Venus, is comfort. The flesh is weak because self-preservation on a physical form and our survival instinct and that Draco aspect in the reptilian brain is very strong, meaning that the flesh is weak when we want to utilize it for a higher spiritual purpose. Again, a second time he went away and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, yours will be done," right? He's basically saying, if this is what you want, I'll do it. But this is my last bargaining chip, right? This is the bargaining phase of the stages of grief. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and they must have been bored. So he left them, went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners." Okay. So enough Bible school for now. The point I'm trying to make is that the surrender to what is really being given to us, and it's going to find its evolution over the course of the next month. And it's when we're challenged down to our very basic survival, when we are challenged down to the physical nature, right? When we are challenged in our comfort, in our security, in our self-preservation of our physical nature and our body, this is where we find ourselves bargaining, right? Or not willing to stand with this part of ourselves in order to, we're not willing necessarily to sacrifice our comfort and our security or even our own self-preservation in order to make this transition into devotion, into spirit, right? So if you're feeling this heaviness, if you're feeling like there's nothing, I've been trying to help people wake up. I've been trying to show them what is going on. I've been trying to show them this, that, or the other thing, right? Without getting into specifics here about it. So I'm not pushed off of particular platforms. There comes a point where we have to submit to the will of some force that is beyond just our physical nature and surrender to what is, right? The nothing can stop what is coming is very much about how this process that is unfolding is already in motion, right? It's already in motion based on all of our collective decision to do so. And now it is unfolding. And again, this is where those stages of grief come in, where we are first in denial, and then there's anger, and then there is bargaining, then there's depression, and then there is acceptance, right? And so I do feel like we're still in this bargaining phase, and it's expressing itself in this like really strong pushback, right? Where we're fighting and we're fighting and we're fighting. Or some people are just giving over, right, to the will of those who would want to control our own decision-making process and our sovereignty. So I know it's a lot, and I'm right with you. And if you're not feeling this way, if you're like in this stage here where you're just like, man, everything, I am in total control of myself, I'm in total control of everything, I'm going to fight, and I'm never going to give up. And I'm not suggesting that anybody should give up on their own sovereignty. But for those who are feeling the pressure of the inevitable, separating of light from dark and what that absolutely means, then this message is mostly for you. So actually, let's start looking at this transmission, and then we'll get into the astrology and show you how it's all calibrated to for this karmic confrontation. We have to actually face ourselves. And Uranus being in a trine to the new moon, right? This Earth trine to the new moon. Especially because Uranus is retrograde, it really did, and will it's going to unfold over the course of the month. It's not something that happens right away with the new moon. You're planting a seed, right? You're planting a seed that will grow over the course of the month. And so in terms of individual growth and evolution. And so if you're expecting something massive to happen with this new moon, as I talked about with one of my clients over the weekend, it's really going to unfold over the course of the month in a natural growth cycle, but it will be directly linked to some sort of Uranian connection, right? Some sort of radical reorientation, some sort of individuation process that comes about by a radical shift in perspective, and certainly is innovative and futuristic and really looking towards the much bigger picture of the collective. But keep in mind that is challenging us and really bringing out our character, and it's important to keep that in mind so that you're not blindsided necessarily as the month unfolds. Because when we get to next month, when Pluto stations direct, when Saturn stations direct, when Jupiter stations direct, right, these are going to be large energies that are switching gears and moving forward, and there's no turning back. There's no turning back now, but it really won't be any turning back at that point. And so we are in a position right now where this new moon has allowed us to set intentions to receive, to set intentions to listen, right? To just be in that space with ourselves and utilize the faculties that we do have, not to fight against anything, but to be open to what is, rather than trying to bargain our way out of it, okay? So first we're going to look here, 5 of Cups, disappointment, Mars in Scorpio. Now you see how it's kind of faced away from the current or the heart of the matter. Something we're kind of facing away. This read is not going to be very popular, okay? I can already tell that some people are going to be like, yeah, I'm feeling that, and other people are not going to like it. So just keep that in mind. Keep an open mind about it. So the disappointment, right? The emotional crisis, the unconscious fears that are starting to come true, the feelings, this disruption in our feelings and this loss of illusion. Is something that we keep trying to place in the past, right? And it certainly is many experiences that are leading up to this point of disappointment, of realization of deception, right? Of the loss of illusion. We've all been along this path now for how long? And there's been plenty of markers along the way that have been like, whoa, that was a moment where I woke up. That was a moment when I realized something. Oh, somebody's at my house right now, and I don't know who it is. So, there is, man, that was really distracting. So, there is, certainly there's been a lot of focus in the past on these, and like I said, markers, right, of loss of illusion, realization of deception, right, coming from, but there's this sense that we're still kind of keeping it in the past, right, that we've already had these moments, okay, that they have been part of our journey, but they're not really relevant to right now. So I, number one, would encourage you to keep an open mind in that there may be more of this coming, but also two, to not get hyper fixated on it because it's been part of the past. So it's moved to this point, but we keep trying to put it back there, right? We keep trying to put it back there. And when we come to this moment right now, we do see the Empress here. And so, of course, this is fertility and growth and love and mercy and maternity, right? The Great Mother. And now the read on the Empress that people are not necessarily going to like, but is very much part of what's going on, is when Venus is in Taurus, and she rules Taurus, right? When Venus is in Taurus, she is very much sensitive to the world around her, and she is all about her comfort and her security. She's the great attractor. So she is only focused on what allows her to feel comfortable, what is harmonious, what's beautiful, what appeases her senses, right? And is all about the love and the mercy and the maternity, right? There's nothing that's beautiful. This is a beautiful thing to be at the center. Now, one way to read this is really important to consider, is that oftentimes that the Empress as an archetypal symbol will cope with life on an emotional and joyful basis rather than accepting reality, okay? I want you to keep this in mind, because as you see as our outcome, our effect of our cause-effect relationship, the Seven of Cups is Venus in Scorpio, which is in her detriment, right? Venus does not like to be in Scorpio. She is her least amount of power because she often is sensitive to the material environment and what appeases her senses. But when she's in Scorpio, she has to go into these dark spaces and tends to be, kind of engage herself in the cloud of intoxication and in the waters of delusion here. So something to keep in mind here is that there are times when we try to cope with the reality of incredible darkness and grief by only focusing on this one aspect, right? Whatever makes me feel comfortable is what I'm going to focus on, at the expense of accepting the reality that is around me and the depth of feeling that goes along with the reality, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this reading. Now, when we look at where we're energetically rooted, and where maybe what's running in the background here, we haven't quite become aware of this. Maybe some of us have. This is operating in the subconscious level. And remember, by the time something comes to your thoughts, to your words, to your expression, it has already embedded itself as a template in your subconscious. It's already there, moving through you to be expressed, right? It's not because if you think of something over and over and over again, you're not going to create it from that. It's already created in you. It's already there as part of who you are in your subconscious. That's something to consider, that if you're obsessively thinking about something, it's not because you don't have to cut yourself off and be like, oh, I shouldn't think about those because I'm going to create that reality. Newsflash, it's already created somewhere. It's energetically already created and it's in your subconscious. So that's something else to keep in mind too. And I teach this to, this is what I do with my clients. This is what I've talked about this many times. This is work that I've done with other people as well. So that's something to consider. And when you take that and apply that to how the law of attraction and the law of manifestation is taught in other circles, you start to see that something is not right about that. There is something there that is throwing everyone off when you think about it that way. If you just think about something enough, you'll get it. Or if you think about something enough, you'll create it. It's like, oh no, it's created. It's already created. By the time it gets to your expression, it's already there. And it's a reflection of what you already are feeling. So you have to get into your subconscious if you really want to make these changes. So where are we subconsciously? Well, the storm is already dispersing, right? The cleanup is required, but it's time to set new roots, seek new ground, new growth, and apply your energy to this process. So there's this idea that it's already happened, right? The storm has already happened, and now it's all of the fallout from it. And it's on such a large level, on a global level, that it seems like it isn't actually the case, right? It seems like that we're still impacting what's going on. And really what we're doing is expressing. We are the expression of the template that has already embedded itself, right? And so the Eight of Forces is that lightning bolt, but when it's reversed, the lightning bolt has already happened, the storm has passed, and now it's time to start moving forward. So now when we meet here with the Empress, that is, yes, love and mercy and the fertility, this is in some ways really good, because we see that the ground now has been cleared, that the soil has been activated by the lightning storm in some ways, and we can put down new roots and we can really grow in this new fertile soil, right? Again, we are still pushing away the disappointment that is represented by the Five of Cups, as if it doesn't apply to right now, but is still very much part of our this causal relationship that we are kind of keeping at arm's length, as if it hasn't happened in a long time or isn't going to happen again, right? So when we come to where we're releasing our energy, the Muse, I mean, this whole energetic polarity here in and of itself feels and looks, separated from everything else, looks really looks like it's on the up and up, right? It looks very creative, and it looks very beautiful, and it looks how we can be inspired. And I'm not suggesting that we can't be inspired. We should be inspired to make these, to have these healing moments within ourselves, to really come to recognize the part of ourselves that need to be accepted and integrated into ourselves, right? This is very deep work, of course. Now, so the Muse is about upliftment and imagination and heightened resourcefulness, and a lot of our creative projects and creative endeavors can receive a lot of energy, right? When we release ourselves through the Muse. And if you think about the Muse as somebody that's, it is receiving the inspiration that is from seemingly outside of us, right? It's not coming from our conscious mind, which is kind of interesting considering the position it's in, that we're in our conscious mind. And I want you to consider that as well, that when we receive something in our conscious mind, we think that we are thinking it up or we're creating it. It's already there. We're just receiving the insight about it at that point, right? Now, it's a very difficult transmission to give because it seems so negative. And I really don't want to be in that place, but I can't not give you the accurate transmission. So where is this all leading? And then you have this beautiful vertical axis here of all of this very feminine, receptive, new ground, fertility, inspiration, creative resourcefulness, all of this stuff. And then bam, Seven of Cups, right? Especially when it's reversed, it's even worse, because this is when you don't even learn your lesson. Right? You don't even learn your lesson. When it's upright, there's a glimmer of hope here that you at least wake up, right? That you realize, sobering as it is, at least you realize. When it's reversed, you're lost. You're lost in the illusion. You're drowning in the swamp. You're not waking up to it, right? And so there's a drunkenness of mind, right? You are in the waters of delusion, the cloud of intoxication, right? Venus just wants to feel good. And instead of looking and feeling the depth of the pain, of the disappointment, of the darkness that Scorpio represents, she will do anything that she can to bypass it. And she will intoxicate herself. She will delude herself. She will get lost in this, and she will, she'll essentially drown in the swamp, right? This is a warning, okay? That if we do not accept the disappointment and the pain, right? And the loss of the illusion, and really embrace it for what it is, instead of pushing it away because we think that if we think about these things, it's going to create it. If we are not real about what's going on, this is where it's headed, that we will just find ourselves surrounded in this cloud, right? And the waters of delusion. And I really do feel like that if we do not surrender to what is, really accept the full picture, the darkness of it and the joy of it, then this is where it's headed, right? And so what can we do? What can we do, right? Number one, here's our Akashic Library, right? It's about going into the depths of our story, knowing who we are, understanding our old motives and what our new purpose is. We descend, right? We descend descend into the basement. We descend into the basement and we start researching. We start understanding ourselves. We start coming to a really strong awareness of what's going on and to see what's stored down there, right? You have to go down to see what that programming is really all about and where it comes from. And then you get to rewrite your own story. And these two animal messages are both mammals that live in the ocean, right? You have the humpback whale and the manatee, right? These are very gentle creatures. They live in the water. They are fairly passive. And specifically the humpback whale, again, it's about vibration. It's about singing. It's about expression through vibration. It's about creation, which is really transformation through expression in a very shamanic way, chanting, toning, singing. It is about using these tools to transform ourselves. This is what creation really means, is transformation. These things are essentially the same thing. You are creating a new form by changing the resonance of what already is. And this is expressed in many different ways throughout nature, obviously. And this is really bringing us back to, it's not about being passive. It's about listening. It's about accepting. It's about resonance, right? And being in the depth of who you are. Water work seems to be really important in this reading, right? You have 2 Scorpio cards, the cups on either side, and you have 2 animal messages that are about mammals in the water that are in the fluid, medium of life, right? And being able to move seamlessly, being able to interact with our own depth of emotion very gracefully. And the whale specifically is about the vibration. The vibration. It's one thing to go into the depths of who you are. It's another to transmute it through your own expression. And this can come about in a lot of different ways. Sound healing is one of them. Like chanting, toning, singing is another way. Listening to music, playing an instrument. I mean, these are all different ideas here to just give you some tools in how to do this, because it's already happening. Right? There's nothing that we're going to do on a global level. And I know that sounds so like defeatist, but it's because we're now just expressing ultimately what is happening, just what is. We're not going to change the course of it. Nothing can stop what's coming. And it's really just an unfoldment at this point. And all we can really do, again, is know ourselves and know ourselves completely. And the vibration and the singing, whatever practice that we use to express and to change vibration is our best course of action, in my opinion, right now, as opposed to fight, fight, fight. And with the manatee, I mean, it's pretty obvious, accept the situation as it is rather than fighting to change it. And this can be our most potent form of inspiration, as opposed to feeling like that we are inspired to, change somebody's mind about something, to make a real strong impact on systems that are really just crumbling, and trying to bargain with it, and the dugong, right, is surrender and accept things as they are, right? And just be graceful and move through the medium of our feelings, which is the water. And of course, here's our balance. Here's our Libra card. The 7 of Forces, right? Justice rather than revenge, pretty much, right? Justice and reciprocity are energetic forces. They are energetic experiences. There's nothing that we're going to do action-wise. It doesn't matter how many posts we make on social media about any of the things. At this point, it's about the balance within ourselves that's going to make the most difference. It didn't matter how many times Jesus was going to bargain with God about the reason he came to earth in the first place. He was still going to fulfill his mission. And it's important that we are able to accept the full extent of what that means, and not delude ourselves into just what makes us feel better on an ego level, or even in our self-preservation and our physical comfort, because that's part of it too. It's way more comfortable to continue to be like, I'm just going to think good thoughts. I'm just going to have the high vibe. I'm just going to stay there and never actually acknowledge the darkness that exists. Because if you don't acknowledge the darkness, how can you truly be an empath? How can you truly be empathic to real suffering if you don't acknowledge it and you're not willing in some ways to allow yourself to go there on your own as part of, and I'm not saying you have to suffer in order to feel compassion, but if you continue to push away real suffering of other people and think for some reason that if you think about it, it's going to make it happen, then you have missed the point entirely. And you will run the risk of being surrounded by a cloud of delusion. So again, the Seven of Forces is about the work that we do, the transfiguration that happens when we find justice and reciprocity in our own self. And again, that we can find our inspiration and our muse through this rather than trying to fight to do anything, because it's unfolding now, right? It's all unfolding now, and people are going to make their choices. And it, like I said, it doesn't matter how much you're trying to control the situation. It really comes back to what are you doing to balance yourself within, and be willing to and able to hold that balance within you in the face of the crumbling or the delusion, being swept away. So I know it's really intense, and I almost didn't want to even come on here because I was just like, I don't want to give this transmission, but it needs to happen. And at the end of the day, that's just my ego that's pushing back against that. And I really want to say thank you to Sonia for really giving me that insight, that it's just the ego that's pushing back against this too. Just like, and please do not think that I'm trying to compare myself to any spiritual avatar like Jesus or anything else. We all have this experience, right? That was the whole point of the story, is that we all have the potential to walk this path and have this experience. And it's your own ego that pushes back and bargains when before the acceptance moment. And so we're really being challenged and really invited to accept, so that we don't find ourselves lost in the cloud of delusion and drowning in our own swamp, so to speak, because we have to acknowledge it. So, and I know that many of us have been going down these rabbit holes for a long time, and we think that we know. And one thing I will challenge you to is that if you think that you know, then you really don't. And you can refer back to Socrates, who was probably the person that I am aware of that was just like, yeah, the real measure of knowledge is basically accepting that you don't know and to question everything. And I think that that's a really useful tool in this whole process. So let's look at the astrology and actually see how we are being, how all of this is being brought to our attention in the natural cycles that we are experiencing. So this is our chart for today. This is the 7th of September. So the new moon has just passed, which means that the moon is still in Virgo. So we're still in a dark moon, just barely coming off the new moon. So it's going to start coming into its waxing crescent. And already this morning, you can see here, where are we here? Too many windows open. You can see here that the moon is in a opposition with Neptune right away, right? Because Neptune is like dissolving everything down, where you have no choice but to surrender, right? Because it just dissolves it all down into one infinite ocean of potential, and you lose yourself. And this is like the hardest place for the ego, right? Is to completely dissolve into a sense of nothingness or seemingly nothingness when you go back to source. And Neptune is influencing this, is the power of that dissolution. And then you have our one little moon over here, our little internalized experience, us feeling our way through it, going, oh, I just want to have some measure of like, that I exist, that I am something. And in this moment, this is not an easy, it's not an easy position to be in, especially just coming off of the new moon that was really giving us an opportunity to set the intention of receiving something, to listen and receive something that shows us that our devotion and our courage and our determination are actually part of this bigger picture that's unfolding, right? The plant does not exist in a vacuum. The plant came from a seed. Now the plant is doing the work to grow the fruit that has the seed of the next cycle. Just like us, we are growing the seed of the next cycle. It's not just about us as individuals and how we feel in the moment. That is Venus and Taurus. As much as she is this beautiful, great mother, like I said, the other side of that is that she will do anything that she can to bypass feeling uncomfortable and will live in this concept of fulfilling her joy without being realistic. So in this opposition already today, as you see, this is where we are really challenged, because the moon is our internal waters. And so there's a very strong connection to Pisces. There's a tendency to want to just give up entirely, right? To just give ourselves over in a way that takes away from any of our individual involvement in it. And so this one moment here in this opposition is where we still feel our humanity, where we still feel the sense that we exist as somebody, and that there is the need of a cooperative effort in reaching any new experience, because Virgo is training us to not only purify and devote ourselves. It's a path of discipleship. But ultimately, when you come into that last decan of Virgo, it's training you to be part of a larger collective of people that are doing the same thing, like being on a team, right? Or the need of a cooperative effort in reaching any new experience, right? Like a caravan of some sort. So again, there's the tendency to just give up, right? Or to just give yourself over to the propaganda, for instance, right? Just give yourself over to the groupthink. That is the dark side of Pisces and Aquarius too, is to give yourself over to the groupthink, to not know that you're any different from anything else, and to just be of that hive mind. But so this one little moment here of the moon in an opposition to Neptune is like our one piece of like, I still exist, and I still have to actually, as an individual sovereign being, still have to give myself to this process as an individual if I want to bear the seed for this next cycle, whatever that is. So right after that, the moon, and this is like, just happened. So the moon then comes into a conjunction. Well, first it comes into a quincunx, as you can see here, with Jupiter in Aquarius in this moment here. So, and pretty much at the same time is in a trine, as you can see, with Pluto. So the moon comes into this moment. And if you remember, this degree of 25 degrees Virgo is the flag at half mast, right? The social acknowledgement of a job well done and a destiny fulfilled, right? And it's not exactly going to be comfortable, because a flag at half mast says that somebody has died. So a part of us maybe has to die. Maybe there is some aspect that needs to be let go of that we have held on to, even our own mortal coil in some ways. Now, in a trine to Pluto, right? This is a connection, this Earth trine, where it's very supported and it's very foundationally secure, that these two things support each other without any real intervention on our part. And Pluto is the power of the cycle of death and rebirth, the transformation process that can only be brought about by the destruction of the old and the death process. And so with Pluto retrograde, of course, this is all going on within us and so, on some level. And so flag at half mast is very much like, yes, the death process. You wouldn't be able to socially acknowledge a job well done and a destiny fulfilled without some sort of marker that shows the destiny has been fulfilled, right? Just like if you look at it from instance of Jesus, like the destiny became fulfilled at the end of his life, right? But it wasn't until he went through that process that he was able to actually fulfill his destiny and then have it acknowledged by, history, essentially. Now, the quincunx to Jupiter is where the work is, right? The alchemical transmutation work to Jupiter in Aquarius that has now just come into the next degree over the weekend of Aquarius, which is about how we have an opportunity here literally to transmute our emotional energies. And so while on the one hand, the letting go of something within ourselves, the surrendering to what is, right, our destiny, and allowing ourselves to be acknowledged for it in some way. It's one thing when we are in this quincunx with Jupiter, right, this 150-degree angle that requires us to adjust ourselves in the moment. It's, Jupiter is representing the capacity to develop a fully conscious aspect of the mind ahead of normal evolution, right? We're being upgraded in some ways, and a process of very conscious individualization, right? That we're making a choice of transmuting our emotional energies. So on the one hand, we're giving ourselves over and we're acknowledging that some part of us emotionally, internally, whatever, that we're letting go of, we're surrendering to, but at the same time, we can adjust ourselves with where Jupiter is in Aquarius, that is expanding within us the space in which this is able to happen, this transmutation. So this is these two aspects at the same time, essentially, in the same degree that the moon in Virgo is making with Jupiter and Pluto, is very, very powerful, and is the measure of some serious mastery in terms of our ability to transmute these very difficult situations. It's not enough to just surrender. We have to then do the rising as from that situation as well. And that's going to be the real measure of our success, if you want to call it that, in this situation. So where are we here? Let's go forward. So we have that, and then the moon comes into a conjunction with Mars. Oh, that's so wonderful. So right after that, which is then, Mars is giving us, and is our warrior, right? He's giving us courage and ambition, right? Is giving us bravery, giving us the energy to move forward, to actualize ourselves, to face our enemy, quote unquote, whatever that is, to face our fear, to move through our fear, that our being ourselves and acting on it is more powerful than the fear of failure, the fear of losing something. And when the moon meets Mars, this is now this could really inflame some things emotionally, but we could also use it as like, yes, this is the opportunity right here to feel brave enough to step out and actually practice this, right? To practice it in the presence of source. It's like coming, it's like an altar boy, and that is the Sabian symbol. A boy with a censer serves the priest near the altar. It's like stepping forward and actually participating in this whole process. Like, it's one thing to do it in a way it's one thing to conceptualize it. It's another entirely to step forward and actually do something. And now we get to feel, Mars is going to infuse us and our feelings with bravery to face this, to step forward and actually put ourselves out there. And again, this seems to be counterintuitive at first, right? Because it's the idea at first that I'm suggesting that we surrender to what is, that we stop fighting it and accept it, and to be this graceful beast in the waters of our emotions, and to move gracefully through this medium, right? It sounds counterintuitive, but what it's really doing is giving us the bravery to step forward on our actual path, surrender to it, and then fulfill it, right? And maybe fulfilling it, it's so much scarier to just accept than it is to keep fighting and fighting and fighting, right? We want to keep bargaining. We want to be angry. We want to push back and push back and push back. And it's not to say we should not necessarily not stand up for ourselves. But what I'm suggesting is that there's so much, how many times are we going to post on social media about all of these things, thinking that it's really going to change other people's choice points? The choice points have been made. They've already been made. It's now just playing itself out. Just like with Jesus in the garden, he had that one last ditch effort because he knew what was coming. He already knew. And it wasn't the best outcome for him as a human being, right? It was painful and scary and very distressing, and he was very distressed. And now, at the very least, we get some infusion of bravery to step forward into the most difficult path, okay? And as we finish up today's transits, we find that Mercury is in a very interesting position in Libra, which is challenging us to, again, we want to be able to go in and extract, right? We want to extract what is, going into the coal mine, right? We're going to go into the coal mine. We're going to keep going down deeper and deeper. And remember, Mercury is able to traverse the underworld successfully and able to come back out. Also showing that our mind is able to go into these spaces and come back without being trapped there. It is possible, right? And that just goes to show that you can go into the depth of your feeling with your mental faculties and not necessarily create it just because you think about it. It's already there. You're going in to acknowledge it, to observe it, to see it for yourself. Now you go into the mind and you bring it out, but you can't stay down there. And this is where Mercury is today in Libra. Now, Venus is also in conjunction with Arcturus. And the degree that she's in really speaks again to the idea that we want to transcend everything and have this perspective of way up here. And there's something to be said for that, right? This is how we learn to master that Libra energy of balance, because we're able to take a perspective that makes it so wide, right? We see it from the moon and we see the picture so much more in its fullness when we're there. But the other thing is that we're also not down on the ground. We're not down on the ground living the lived experience when we do that. And so we can't stay there, which again goes back to this tendency for the Empress as an archetypal symbol. As much as beautiful and harmonious and fertile and maternal it is, there's also a rejection of reality potentially in that situation. And Venus, especially in a conjunction with Arcturus, and they are the wisdom keepers of this universe and in this galaxy, but we can't stay there, but we also can't simultaneously stay in the underworld either. I mean, these are very precarious times and it's very tricky. And we all have to kind of figure it out on our own at the end of the day, because we all are, in fact, alone when it comes down to it. And nobody can bear our own individual burden for us. We have to do it ourselves. So we have a lot of resources at our disposal right now that's shown to us in the astrology. Now, tomorrow, Mercury is going to come into an opposition with Chiron in this same degree, right? The 11 to 12 degree Libra, which is the miners going in and extracting, but also the warning. It's a warning not to stay there. We can't live in the coal mine forever. And I would challenge you, if you are a person that is continuing to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, to be mindful that the real danger of and possibility of doing these hard and often dark pursuits is spiritual asphyxiation. Okay, there's consequences to this extraction, just like the coal miners developed the lung issues by going into the coal mines. You cannot stay down there. So there is something to be said for balancing this out. And there's also something to be said for a consciousness that's able to transcend the conflicts and pressures of personal life. But we can't live in the airplane either, right? We can't live underneath in the coal mine, endlessly digging down the rabbit hole. But we also can't endlessly live up in the airplane in the sky. We have to figure out a way to balance these things out. And I feel like again, accepting what is and living here on Earth and acknowledging that the choice points have already been made for a lot of people. And of course, we get to make choices every single moment of the day. And that's really all we have, is the choices within us and how we're going to live the best life that we can, and not really leak our energy all over the place trying to fight back and fight back and fight back. You will be given your opportunities to stand in your power when it's time. And many people already have, right? Many people are going through this in their own way. And so if you don't find yourself there right this moment, I assure you it's going to come to your doorstep eventually. And that's what people usually need in order to really surrender themselves to their higher purpose, is that they have to have this really strong and really drastic thing that they can't bargain their way out of, that they have to accept. And accept the consequences of, right? It's not to say you should just accept the controllers telling you what to do. You mindfully and consciously accept the consequences of your actions, and knowing full well what it's going to bring to you. And you do it with love, and you do it with some conscious awareness, and not blaming other people, other than, you can still acknowledge that they are utilizing control mechanisms without, losing sight of the fact that you have a choice in every moment. And at the end of the day, they can't take away your own thoughts, even though they try to superimpose other hive mind thoughts. That's very real, but they haven't taken away your actual sovereignty. So sometimes you have to deprogram yourself, or you have to dig down, but you can't stay there forever. I feel like I could just keep saying this over and over and over again. So I'm just going to leave it there for today. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, you can find me at my website. It's in the description box below, catalystenergies.net. And I'm on Telegram and Facebook. And I hope everyone's doing well, that they had a really good holiday weekend, at least here in the United States, that the new moon has been a time of sowing beautiful seeds of intention for healing and reconciliation and devotion to oneself and purification and all the Virgo things, right? And we'll be here tomorrow to talk about Mercury and its opposition to Chiron, because that's going to be a nice little trigger of our very basic wounding, shame, and guilt of who we are, and the inevitable polarization within ourselves when we come to realize that cosmic order, natural law are in fact in opposition a lot of times to the human law and what that brings up in us. And so Mercury again will be in Libra in this position, able to help us balance out, which is the ability to extract the deeper wisdom from the past and in the depths of who we are. So thank you guys. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.